Oh, I see my role as in many ways, many roles. There's many roles. The deepest one and most profound one is a human role, and that is to to promote, which is an odd word, but to express to all people that I meet at a national level, international level, uh, uh, that we must accept all people and value all human beings and address our human condition in as many ways as we can through our writing and our voices, in our poetry, in our performance, in our art, and as human beings, whatever we're doing. The poet just doesn't talk. The poet talks poetry, but poetry is not poetry talk. It's human talk. The poet talks poetry, but the poetry is not just poetry talk.
Mm-hmm.
It's human talk. So it's for everybody, and about everything as much as we can, as possible. So I want to say to all that we need to talk about the stories of people. We need to look into a lot of experiment and new ways of expressing ourselves, and creativity and forms and language and play and concepts and new visions and new ways of finding what we are, who we are, and what the world and the galaxy is. All those things right there.
Mm-hmm.
But we also need to care about each other, and we need to have compassion, and we need to address difficult subjects, very difficult subjects, the kind of subjects sometimes you don't want to talk about. Issues of race, issues of gender, homophobia, and on, of color, women's position in society, our sexuality, our sexualities, and conflict, heavy conflict, violence in our streets, in our lives, sexual assault, all and more. All that is taking place. We cannot just express ourselves on one side of the street, where it's swept, and there's sweepers that go by, these big machines that roll by and suck up all the debris. We have to look at everything, and most of all, we have to walk with the people and listen to the people, not just tell the people, but listen to the people. Poetry is more listening, ironically, than speaking. And working with audiences, and the audience in itself is a poetry moment. It's not just a poet on a stage. The audience itself is the largest piece, the largest aspect of the poem or of the reading, the poetry reading. The audience itself is a larger part of the poem than the poem is in the reading. And so all those things need to be, looked at. And that's good because then the audience brings its aspirations. It's the human beings in the audience are all unique. They're all very interested. They're all listening deeply, and they all have something to say. They give me drawings. They have me books that they publish, chapbooks, and they tell me things. And they tell me if I'm off base sometimes, or they tell me to keep on doing it. So in that audience, there's a lot. It's a very creative world, and it's a world that really represents the community as well, because everyone's interested in talking about what's going on in their lives. And it's not all poetics either. It's where people are really where they're really at. Young people, teachers, children, in the front row. They ask questions. I say, what's your question? Yes, I'm 11 years old, and I want to know about how to make my writing better. I say, well, why do you ask that question? I say that because I want to know what this young boy was writing, so I could address his concern about making that writing better. Oh, well, I'm writing about children who have been abandoned because their parents have been deported. So that's what happens in that audience. They're not just sitting down, nodding their heads to the poem. They're interested in things. They're caring about certain things, and they're listening.
It's alive.
It's alive. The audience is alive. It's life, right? Well, it's the people's newspaper. It's the people's newspaper. It's a people's. In some places, it's a people's Bible. In some places, it's a people's newspaper, and it's the people's harmonica. It's like it's like the early African American musicians that had a guitar and a harmonica. A guitar didn't cost that much, and a harmonica didn't cost that much. So then you sing your blues, you play your blues with that harmonica, and your little hand and your two hands, you play that guitar, or you find a way to play that guitar, and you teach yourself and you watch each other play it, you pick up the chords, and you pick up the style and the beat, and all of a sudden you're off and running, and you're telling the stories of what's going on in whatever way you can, harmonica and blues guitar, or just strumming and singing, or just moaning a little bit and whistling, or playing, the harmonica. My father played the harmonica, and he came from the 1800s, so imagine. That's what he had. He had a little harmonica himself. So the poem is the people's newspaper, and it lends itself to telling the story, telling the news of the day, speaking about an event, alerting people something is about to happen, or something did happen, or a person that never has been given proper recognition, and you bring them up. You stand them up, and you say, "This is who this person is, and let me tell you about them." And or you write to the people. I was just looking up Jupiter Hammond, the first African American poet in the United States, writing to what then was called the Negroes of New York City, and African Americans of New York City, and that's way back in 1830 or so, 1830 or so. If I got that right. So it's also an address. You can address the people and talk about something that you see that's going on, and then the major media outlets are not necessarily talking about it, or they're not talking about it in your words, and people need to hear each other's words. We want journalists, we want newspapers, and we also want the newspaper of the people, which is the poet and the poem. Of course, it can be also just strictly a poem in its more traditional forms, but even more traditional forms spoke of personal relationships and what was taking place. I really do, I really do. I think if we got people together that were fighting each other, and somehow work, built a circle or formed a circle, and introduced, had people express themselves and the most reflective way they could about what just took place, or what they did, or what they did, or what they experienced. I think that would be more, and this is could be done with poetry. I think that would yield more. It would yield something more human than grabbing that person and shaking them up and brutalizing them, and shouting at them, and dragging them to jail immediately, or our crime and punishment is not working. We have such high levels of violence, incredible levels of access to millions of guns, millions, as you know, of guns and bullets and anything you want on the internet, bazookas, and all that. Whoever taps into that internet can get that. But we don't have access to forming circles. We don't have access to what are other alternatives to take care of with what's going on in ourselves, with someone else, or in our community and with other communities. There's so many communities of young people in high school just itching to kill each other. And there's many communities where young people are working very hard to make their communities a better community. But when it comes to dealing with violence, we have, given our institutions, we have we haven't tapped into creativity as much as we can. Even though I know social workers and parole officers and lawyers and judges and police and the front line that deals with violence head on, or that's involved in violence head on, makes many attempts to find creative ways. But institutions have many limits imposed on them, and many rules and regulations imposed on them, and the system is not flexible enough to say, why don't we just get together and let's write some poems. And that's how you can do it. I've taught poetry in prison, and it can't be done. It can't be done. And you have to let the people just breathe it out. It's hard to do, because someone may blow at any time in that circle and go back to that very painful anger, very big, deep, boiling lava-like anger, and explode. So the thing is just take it as far as you can, and then find a way to come back to letting people express themselves, and provide an environment where you're listening more than talking to people, and where you're using art and drawing and creating images and playing with words, and also getting deep and reflective, and playing with music and using groups, having groups perform, not just individuals. And the group is a great thing. Our sense of group work is it's kind of been abandoned. My sense of it. We have group in sports, but group work for therapists use a lot of group work, and counselors use group work. But we need to open that to enhance group work as much as possible, because that's where we get feedback. That's where we feel people can listen to us, and we can work together on something and find something that we both, or three of us, or the group created, that wouldn't have been possible without everybody's participation. And poetry works like that as well, in chorus, in ensembles, in performance, in words, in writing, different kinds of words. So questions of violence and questions of massacres, which are kind of extreme violence, and sexual assault, we just can't let them go by. It happened, it's on TV, it's terrible, there's nothing I can do because I don't know the people, and I'm moving on. No, you can stop right there. You can stop, write a poem, or you can write a poem with a group of people, or you can put a poem banner up on your block. If you can put a political banner on your lawn, you can put a poem on your lawn.